Part 1, Captain Picard and the USS Enterprise escaped Grand Admiral Thrawn's trap, helped the Rebel Alliance destroy the Death Star, and witnessed the fall of Emperor Palpatine. The tyrant is dead. The galaxy is free, or so they thought, because while the Empire burns, its most dangerous weapon survived under Darth Vader lives, consumed by rage and hunting the ship that helped destroy everything he served. And he's not alone. Grand Admiral Thrawn has studied Enterprise's every move, and he's built a trap that even Federation technology can't escape. If you haven't seen Part 1, the link is pinned in the comments. You need that context. And if you're caught up, hit subscribe right now, because Part 2 is where this saga gets darker than you can imagine. Let's begin. The conference room aboard home, one should have been filled with celebration. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Endor. 3 months since the Death Star's destruction had sent shockwaves through the galaxy that the New Republic was still struggling to interpret. But the faces around Mon Mothma's table carried exhaustion rather than triumph, and the tactical displays told a story that made Picard's command instincts scream warnings. Another Imperial warlord has declared independence, Admiral Thrawn said. His Mon calamari features drawn with fatigue that even his amphibious physiology couldn't hide. That makes 17 separate factions claiming legitimate authority over Imperial territory. Grand Moff Kana controls the Puntista alignment. Admiral Zunj commands a personal fleet of over 100 star destroyers, and these are just the ones we know about. The holographic display showed a galaxy fragmenting like shattered glass, each piece controlled by a different warlord, each one with access to Imperial weapons and the ruthlessness to use them. The fall of centralized authority hadn't brought peace. It had unleashed chaos on a scale that made the Civil War look organized by comparison. "We destroyed the Empire," Mon Mothma said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of unintended consequences, only to create a dozen smaller empires, each one desperate to prove themselves the legitimate successor. The galaxy is more dangerous now than it was under Palpatine. Picard stood at the viewport, watching New Republic supply ships distributing humanitarian aid to refugee populations that numbered in the billions. 3 months aboard Home One, 3 months of helping the fledgling democracy establish itself. 3 months of watching Federation principles tested against galactic-scale anarchy. Enterprise had become the New Republic's most valuable asset. Its shields could protect supply convoys. Its transporters could evacuate populations from combat zones. Its mere presence deterred warlords from attacking civilian targets. But Picard felt the weight of displacement more acutely with each passing day. They were stufflet officers, explorers and diplomats, not kingmakers or nation builders. Every day they remained involved in this galaxy's politics was another day they weren't searching for a way home. "Captain Picard," Mon Mothma's voice pulled him from contemplation, "your counsel has been invaluable these past months, but I sense you're troubled by something beyond tactical concerns." Picard turned to face the assembled New Republic leadership, beings who'd fought for freedom, and now struggled under the burden of building something from the ashes of tyranny. "Senator, I'm troubled by the realization that we may have helped create a power vacuum we're not equipped to fill. The Federation's history includes similar situations: the fall of the Rumitslan Star Empire, the Klingon Civil War. We learned, often painfully, that destroying tyranny is easier than building democracy." "You're saying we're not ready to govern," Thrawn said, not accusingly but with the blunt assessment of a military officer who valued honesty. "I'm saying governance is harder than rebellion, and the skills required for each are fundamentally different. The Empire controlled through fear and overwhelming force. You're attempting to build consensus among thousands of systems that haven't practiced democracy in a generation. That's not a criticism. It's an observation that you're attempting something extraordinarily difficult." La Organa, who joined the Leadership Council after Endor, leaned forward. She'd grown into her role as both princess and politician, carrying the weight of Alderaan's destruction with a grace that reminded Picard of the best stufflet diplomats. Then help us, Captain. Enterprise represents everything the New Republic aspires to be, a vessel of exploration and peace that possesses military capability, but uses it only in service of principles. Stay with us until we're stable enough to stand on our own. It was a compelling argument, delivered with sincerity that Picard couldn't dismiss. But before he could respond, Counselor Trugg gasped, her hand flying to her temple as her empathic senses overloaded with something that made her physically recoil. Counselor, Picard was at her side instantly, supporting her as she swayed. Captain, there's something. She struggled to articulate sensations that transcended language. The Force. I've been sensing it since we arrived, like background music I'd learned to tune out. But just now it changed. There's a wound, a tear in the fabric of everything. It's like standing next to a black hole of pure hatred and pain, and it's getting closer. Luke Skywalker, who'd been meditating silently in the corner, opened his eyes with an expression that mixed dread and recognition. I feel it too, a presence I thought was gone, a darkness that survived undone. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. My father, Darth Vader, is alive. The room erupted into chaos. Impossible, Ukba declared. Intelligence confirmed Vader died on the Death Star. Multiple sources. We saw the funeral pyre on Endor. What you saw was a deception, Luke said, standing with the kind of certainty that came from Force-granted knowledge. Or a mistake. But I'm telling you, through the Force I can sense him. He's wounded, barely clinging to life, consumed by rage that burns like a sun. And he's focused on one thing. Luca's eyes found Picard's. Your ship. He blames Enterprise for the Emperor's death, for the Empire's fall, and he's coming to destroy you. Picard felt the familiar ice-water clarity of command decisions made under impossible pressure. Vader, the Empire's enforcer, a being who could choke people with a thought and deflect blaster fire with his mind. A warrior who'd slaughtered Jedi and crushed rebellions single-handedly. And now he was hunting Enterprise specifically. How long do we have? Picard asked, his tone shifting to tactical assessment. Luca closed his eyes, reaching out through the Force in ways that still made the Enterprise crew uncomfortable. This galaxy's mystical energy defied every scientific principle they'd built careers on. Days, maybe a week. He's gathering resources, commandeering Imperial remnant forces. He's building a fleet with one purpose, to trap and destroy your vessel. Let him come, Worf growled from where he stood at attention, the Klingon security chief's warrior instincts welcoming the prospect of facing a legendary enemy. Enterprise has faced worse threats. We will defeat him. You don't understand, Luke said urgently. Vader isn't like anything you've faced. The Borg assimilate, they follow patterns, programming. The Force doesn't work like that. Vader can sense intentions before you act on them. He can move objects without touching them. He can influence minds, cause pain with a thought. Your technology, all of it, means nothing if he can simply reach through it with the Force. Data, who'd been analyzing sensor logs from the past 3 months, looked up from his console with his characteristic expression of android fascination touched by concern. Captain, I have been monitoring subspace distortions and what this galaxy classifies as Force signatures since the Battle of Endor. There has been a consistent anomaly moving through Imperial space, commandeering vessels and eliminating opposition with efficiency that suggests superhuman capabilities. The pattern matches what we know of Darth Vader's tactics. Luke is correct. Vader has survived, and he has been hunting us for weeks. Then we need to move Enterprise somewhere he can't find us, Riker suggested, his first officer's tactical mind working through scenarios. This galaxy is vast. We could hide in the unknown regions, or... He'll find us, Troy interrupted, her empathic senses still overwhelmed by the distant presence she touched. The Force connects all living things. We've integrated kyber crystals into our warp core, crystals that are themselves conduits for the Force. We're not just in this galaxy anymore. We're connected to it at a fundamental level. Vader can track us through the crystals themselves. The implications settled over the room like a funeral shroud. Enterprise's greatest advantage, the kyber-enhanced warp drive that made them faster and more efficient than any vessel in either galaxy, had become a homing beacon for their most dangerous enemy. Geordi's voice came through the comm system, urgent with the kind of engineering crisis that made captains age prematurely. "Captain, you need to come to engineering. Now, the kyber crystals, something's wrong with them." Engineering was in controlled chaos when Picard arrived. Technicians running diagnostics, warning lights flashing, and at the center of it all, the warp core's kyber crystal matrix pulsing with erratic, sickly energy that looked nothing like the harmonious glow they'd maintained for 3 months. "Report," Picard demanded, moving to stand beside Geordi, who was studying readouts with his visor that allowed him to perceive energy wavelengths invisible to human vision. "Captain, the crystals are destabilizing. Look at this resonance pattern." Geordi pulled up a holographic display showing the crystal's quantum signature. What should have been smooth, regular waves now showed jagged spikes and troughs that spoke to fundamental disharmony. "This started about 10 minutes ago. The crystals are resonating at frequencies that suggest they're responding to external stimuli. And Captain, they're afraid." "Afraid?" Riker repeated. "Geordi, they're crystals, mineral formations. They don't experience emotion." "Except they do," Beverly interjected, arriving from sickbay with medical tricorder in hand and an expression that suggested she'd made a discovery she didn't fully understand. "I've been running long-term biometric scans on the crystals." Yes, biometric, because these things blur the line between mineral and organic. "They respond to consciousness, Captain. They attune to living beings' emotional and mental states. And right now," she gestured to the sickly, pulsing matrix, "they're experiencing the kyber crystal equivalent of existential terror." Data had followed Picard to engineering, his android brain processing implications that organic minds struggled to articulate. If Counselor Troy is correct that Darth Vader radiates hatred and darkness through the Force, and the kyber crystals are Force conduits integrated into our most essential systems, then what we are observing is the crystals reacting to Vader's approach. They sense him, his rage, his darkness, his intent to destroy us. And that proximity is causing quantum-level destabilization. "How close is he?" Picard asked, the tactical question cutting through metaphysical speculation. "Unknown, Captain. The Force does not operate according to spatial distance as we understand it. Vader could be 10 systems away or entering this system as we speak. The crystal's response indicates only that his presence in the Force is strong enough to affect them across considerable distance." Picard moved to the warp core, staring at the kyber matrix that had seemed like a gift 3 months ago. Unlimited power, enhanced capabilities, integration with this galaxy's fundamental energies. Now it was a vulnerability, a backdoor through which their enemy could reach directly into Enterprise's heart. "Can we isolate the crystals?" he asked Geordi. "Shield them somehow from Force influence?" Geordi shook his head, frustration evident. "Captain, I've been trying every type of shielding we have: electromagnetic, subspace, even metaphasic fields. Nothing works. The Force isn't radiation or energy in any form we can measure or block. It's something else, something that exists outside conventional physics. The only way to protect the crystals from Force influence would be to disconnect them entirely. And if we do that, we lose warp drive," Riker concluded. "We're back to impulse speed, which means we can't outrun pursuit, can't escape if things go bad." The tactical situation was crystallizing with terrible clarity. They were being hunted by an enemy who could track them through their own power source, who possessed abilities that Federation technology couldn't counter, who'd proven capable of single-handedly destroying rebel cells and crushing resistance through pure personal power. And their greatest advantage, mobility, was compromised by the very system that provided it. "Captain," Luke's voice came through the comm, I need to speak with you, privately. It's about my father, about what he's capable of and what he's planning." In the observation lounge 10 minutes later, Luke paced like a caged predator, his Jedi robes swirling as he struggled to articulate truths he'd spent 3 months trying to process. On Endor, in the Emperor's throne room, I felt my father's conflict. The light side was still there, buried under decades of darkness but not extinguished. That conflict is what allowed him to turn, to destroy Palpatine and save me. "But Captain," Luke met Picard's eyes with an intensity that made the captain understand why beings throughout this galaxy feared and respected Jedi. "The light side didn't win. Not completely. When the Death Star exploded, my father survived because his rage wouldn't let him die. The dark side kept him alive through sheer hatred. Hatred of himself, of what he'd become, of a galaxy that took everything from him. And now that hatred has a target: you." "Why us specifically?" Beverly asked, present as both chief medical officer and the captain's closest confidant. "The Emperor is dead because of his own actions, his own schemes. Why blame Enterprise?" "Because blame isn't logical, Doctor. It's emotional. My father looks at you and sees beings from beyond this galaxy who disrupted everything. You helped destroy the Death Star. You fought against the Empire. You represent proof that there are other ways, other civilizations built on principles he rejected when he fell to the dark side. Your very existence is a mirror showing him what he could have been, and he can't stand it." Picard absorbed this, recognizing patterns he'd seen in other damaged beings throughout his career. He's projecting his self-hatred onto an external target. It's a psychological defense mechanism, easier to destroy us than face his own culpability. "Exactly, and that makes him infinitely more dangerous because he has nothing left to lose. The Emperor is dead. The Empire is fractured. His identity, his purpose, everything he sacrificed for gone. All that remains is rage and a target for that rage." Luke's voice dropped. "Captain, I know my father. I've faced him in combat. And I'm telling you, if Vader boards Enterprise, your ship will fall. Not because your technology is inferior, but because the Force grants abilities that technology cannot counter. He'll sense your tactics before you employ them. He'll deflect your weapons with his mind. He'll turn your crew against each other through Force manipulation. And he'll tear your ship apart piece by piece until nothing remains but wreckage and corpses." The observation lounge fell silent save for the ambient hum of Enterprise's systems. Systems that suddenly seemed fragile against a threat that operated outside their design parameters. "Then we need to ensure he never boards us," Picard said finally, command decision solidifying. "Mr. Skywalker, you're the only person aboard with direct experience fighting Vader. I'm authorizing you to work with Commander Worf to develop defensive protocols specifically designed for Force users. Assume Vader can penetrate our sensors, bypass our security, and influence our crew. Design countermeasures accordingly." "Captain, there may not be countermeasures," Luke said bluntly. "My masters, Obi-Wan and Yoda, taught me that you can't defeat the dark side through Force alone. You have to understand it, confront it, and ultimately reject it. Technology, tactics, weapons, they're tools, but the real battle happens in here." He tapped his chest. "In your principles, your convictions, your willingness to stand for what's right even when it costs everything. That's the only defense against someone like my father." Picard recognized the challenge Luke was articulating. This wasn't a battle that could be won through superior firepower or tactical brilliance. This was an ideological confrontation where Enterprise's Federation principles would be tested against an enemy who represented the ultimate rejection of those principles. "Then we'll face that test," Picard said simply. "Enterprise has always stood for something: exploration, diplomacy, the inherent dignity of all sentient life. If those principles can't survive confrontation with the dark side, then perhaps they were never as strong as we believed. But I have faith in this crew, in these ideals, and in the conviction that hope and principle are ultimately more powerful than hatred and rage." Luke smiled slightly, recognizing the echo of his own Jedi training in Picard's words. "You sound like a Jedi, Captain. My masters would have liked you." "High praise, Mr. Skywalker. Now let's." Red alert klaxons screamed through Enterprise, cutting off whatever Picard was about to say. Worf's urgent voice came through every speaker simultaneously. "Captain, to the bridge. We are detecting a massive fleet emerging from hyperspace. Configuration matches Imperial remnant forces. Estimate 40 vessels, including 6 Star Destroyers. And Captain," Worf's pause spoke volumes, "one of the Star Destroyers is broadcasting a message on all frequencies. It is addressed to you personally. The transmission is from Darth Vader. He says he's come to collect what the Empire is owed." Picard was already moving, Luke beside him, both racing toward the turbolift that would carry them to the bridge, and the confrontation that would determine whether Federation principles could survive in a galaxy that operated on fundamentally different rules. As they stepped into the turbolift, Luke grabbed Picard's arm, his force-enhanced perception showing him probabilities that made his heart sink. "Captain, one more thing. Grand Admiral Thrawn is with him. I can sense it, 2 brilliant minds working in concert. Vader's rage and power combined with Thrawn's tactical genius. They've planned this perfectly. Whatever's about to happen on that bridge." Luke's voice carried the weight of prophecy. "It's going to change everything." The turbolift doors closed, carrying them toward destiny while Enterprise's kyber crystals pulsed with terror, sensing the darkness that had come to destroy them. This is just the beginning. In the next section, we see Vader's perspective, and trust me, you've never seen the Dark Lord like this. Don't go anywhere, and if you're hooked, hit that subscribe button because Part 3 will blow your mind. Keep watching. The medical bay aboard the Star Destroyer * Devastator was a nightmare of twisted metal and repurposed surgical equipment, hastily assembled by engineers who understood machines better than medicine. In its center, suspended in a Bacta tank that hissed and bubbled with failing life support systems, floated what remained of Darth Vader. The dark armor was scorched and cracked, exposing circuits and mechanical components underneath. His respirator wheezed irregularly, each breath a struggle against systems damaged beyond proper repair. But his eyes, those yellow, Sith-corrupted eyes visible through the cracked visor, burned with a hatred so pure it had kept him alive through injuries that should have killed any being 3 times over. Through the Force, Vader felt everything. The Emperor's death, a supernova of agony as his master's essence was cast into the void. The Death Star's destruction, billions of credits and years of construction vaporized by rebel terrorists aided by an unknown vessel from beyond the galaxy. And his own son's rejection. Luke had reached for the light side, had pulled Anakin Skywalker momentarily to the surface, but in the end had left him to die in the exploding battle station. Left to die, but Vader refused. The dark side of the Force was fueled by passion, by anger, hatred, suffering, and fear. And Vader had an infinite wellspring of all 4, his rage at the rebels who destroyed his purpose, his hatred of himself for the weakness that had allowed a moment of redemption, his suffering from injuries that would have killed lesser beings instantly, his fear that without the Emperor, without the Empire, without purpose, he was nothing but a broken remnant of Anakin Skywalker, the failed Jedi who'd lost everything. That rage kept his heart beating. That hatred powered his lungs. That suffering sharpened his connection to the dark side until it sang through his veins like acid. And that fear drove him to find a new purpose, a new target for the infinite darkness that churned inside his ruined body. Enterprise, the unknown vessel, the ship from beyond that had provided the pivotal advantage at Endor, that had stolen kyber crystals from Imperial convoys, that represented everything the Empire was not: exploration instead of conquest, diplomacy instead of domination, principles instead of power. Vader had studied every scrap of intelligence about the vessel, its impossible technology that transported matter through solid barriers, its shields that absorbed turbolaser fire that should have vaporized any ship. Its commander, this Captain Picard, who spoke of dignity and rights and freedom as if those concepts mattered more than strength and order. The very existence of Enterprise offended Vader on a level deeper than tactics or strategy. It was proof that there were other ways, other civilizations that had chosen paths the Empire rejected. And that proof had to be destroyed, not just defeated, eliminated so thoroughly that no trace remained to inspire hope in those who opposed Imperial order. But Vader was pragmatic beneath his rage. He knew his injuries were severe, knew his power was diminished, knew that facing Enterprise alone would result in failure. Which was why, 3 days after Endor, he had reached out through the Force to find the one being in the Empire who might understand the threat this unknown vessel represented. Grand Admiral Thrawn. The Kiss arrived aboard Devastator with characteristic precision. No fanfare, no entourage, just the blue-skinned alien genius whose tactical brilliance had earned him a position in an empire that despised non-humans. He entered Vader's medical bay without hesitation, those glowing red eyes assessing Vader's condition, with the same clinical detachment he might evaluate a damaged starship. "Lord Vader," Thrawn said, his cultured voice carrying no judgment about the Dark Lord's compromised state. "Your message indicated you wish to discuss the unknown vessel, Enterprise. I am most interested in this topic." Vader's respirator wheezed as he gestured to a holographic display built into the medical bay. With a thought channeled through the Force, he activated the projection, showing Enterprise's sleek configuration and the tactical data accumulated from 3 months of sporadic engagements. "You have studied them," Vader said, each word requiring effort through his damaged vocabulator. "You understand what they represent, a threat that cannot be allowed to survive." "I have indeed studied them," Thrawn agreed, moving to examine the hologram with the intense focus of a collector admiring a rare artifact. Fascinating beings. Their commander, this Picard, is a tactician of considerable skill but hobbled by principles that limit his actions. He values life, even enemy life, to a degree that borders on weakness. He refuses to destroy when destruction would be tactically optimal. He seeks diplomatic solutions even when force would be more efficient. "Weakness," Vader agreed, "but dangerous weakness. His ship's technology compensates for his moral limitations. He does not need to be ruthless when his shields can absorb any attack, when his transporters can bypass any defense." Precisely, which is why conventional tactics have failed. Thrawn pulled up tactical recordings from the engagement at Jedha and the escape at Endor. "But Lord Vader, I have been analyzing patterns in their behavior. Every choice Picard makes, every tactical decision, every strategic priority, they all reveal his psychology, and psychology is exploitable." Vader leaned forward in his back-to-tank, yellow eyes narrowing. "Explain." Thrawn's smile was slight but genuine, the expression of an artist who'd found the perfect subject. "Picard is bound by something called the Prime Directive, a principle from his Federation that prohibits interference in other civilizations' development. He has already violated this directive by allying with the rebellion, and that violation troubles him. I can sense it in his tactical choices. He's constantly trying to minimize his impact, to help without dominating, to win without destroying. That hesitation is a vulnerability." "He will hesitate to kill me," Vader said, understanding dawning. "Even knowing I am hunting him, even knowing I intend to destroy his ship, he will attempt to capture or disable rather than execute, because his principles demand it." "Exactly, and while he hesitates, we strike." Thrawn pulled up new tactical displays showing Imperial remnant forces that had remained loyal despite the Emperor's death. "I have assembled a fleet of 40 vessels, commanded by captains who follow me personally, who understand that the Empire's future requires eliminating threats before they metastasize. We will trap Enterprise using a strategy that exploits both their technological advantages and Picard's psychological weaknesses." Vader studied the tactical display. His strategic mind, damaged but not destroyed, recognizing the brilliance of Thrawn's approach. You will make them choose between their principles and their survival. I will make them choose between their principles and the survival of millions, Thrawn corrected. That is far more effective. A captain might sacrifice himself for principles, but sacrifice innocence. That requires a conviction few beings possess. He turned to face Vader directly. Lord Vader, I can trap the vessel and disable its technological advantages, but their commander, this Picard, has proven adept at finding solutions I do not anticipate, which is where you become essential. You need my power, Vader said, understanding the tactical calculation. The Force grants abilities their technology cannot counter. I can sense their intentions, influence their crew, board their vessel despite their shields and defenses. More than that, I need your presence. The dark side radiates from you like heat from a star. Their ship has integrated kyber crystals into its power systems, crystals that are Force-sensitive. Your very proximity destabilizes their most critical systems. You are not just a weapon, Lord Vader. You are a virus that corrupts their advantages from within. Vader considered this, feeling the dark side surge with approval. Yes, he would be the poison in their systems, the nightmare that their principles couldn't protect them from, the darkness that would prove Federation ideals were nothing but pleasant lies that shattered under pressure. What is your plan? Vader asked. Thrawn activated a new display, a star system in the outer rim, unremarkable except for one detail that made Vader's ruined lips twist into something approximating a smile. The Balmorra system, Thrawn explained. Industrial world, population 8 billion, currently under nominal Imperial control but unstable. The New Republic has been negotiating with Balmorra's leadership to bring them into the Alliance. Enterprise has been assigned to escort New Republic diplomats to the negotiations, playing Guardian, because their shields make them ideal for preventing Imperial interference. You will attack Balmorra, Vader said, seeing the trap's outline. Force Enterprise to choose between protecting diplomats or defending civilians. Better than that, I will threaten to orbital bombard Balmorra's cities unless Picard surrenders his ship. 8 billion lives held hostage against his principles. He can sacrifice himself to save them, which gives us the ship. Or he can refuse and watch billions die, which breaks him psychologically and proves his principles were always negotiable. Either way, we win. It was elegant in its cruelty, precisely the kind of trap that would have earned the Emperor's approval. Vader felt something almost like satisfaction through the constant pain. His apprenticeship under Palpatine had taught him to appreciate strategies that turned an enemy's strengths into weaknesses. And when he attempts to transport the hostages away, Vader asked, anticipating the obvious counter. Their transporters can evacuate millions. Which is where you come in, Lord Vader. Thrawn pulled up technical schematics he'd painstakingly assembled from captured data and intelligence analysis. Their transporter technology operates by converting matter to energy and reconverting it at a new location. It requires precise sensor locks and stable energy signatures. But the Force, particularly the dark side, creates distortions in energy fields. Your presence generates interference that makes transporter locks unstable. Not impossible, but slow and error-prone. They cannot evacuate 8 billion people while under attack, not with you generating force-based interference across the entire system. Vader understood. They would turn Enterprise's greatest tactical advantage into a liability. Every moment Picard tried to use the transporter to save civilians would be a moment Vader's fleet could exploit. Every choice to save lives would create openings for attack. And underlying it all, Vader himself would be a presence in the Force, so overwhelming that their kyber-enhanced systems would scream in protest. When do we strike? Vader asked. 3 days, long enough to position our forces, short enough that New Republic intelligence won't detect our preparations. Your ship, *Devastator*, will lead the assault. I suggest you use the intervening time to augment your forces with whatever Imperial remnant units remain loyal. The more conventional the fleet appears, the less prepared Picard will be for your personal intervention." Vader nodded, his tactical mind already cataloging resources. The 501st Legion remained fiercely loyal to him personally, elite stormtroopers who'd served him for decades. Several Star Destroyer captains owed their positions to his patronage, and there were always those in the military who preferred order to chaos, who saw the New Republic as weak and Enterprise as an interloper to be eliminated. "I will have 40 capital ships and support craft," Vader confirmed, "sufficient to overwhelm their shields through sustained bombardment while I board their vessel personally." "About that," Thrawn said, his tone suggesting he'd anticipated this aspect. "Lord Vader, you are their primary counter to conventional tactics, but you are also their most exploitable vulnerability. Picard will not simply allow you to board. He will attempt to contain, disable, or redirect you. And his crew includes Luke Skywalker, your son, a Jedi, and one of the few beings in the galaxy who can match you in the Force." The mention of Luke sent a spike of conflicting emotions through Vader: rage at his son's rejection, bitter pride that the boy had grown so strong, and buried beneath layers of dark side corruption, a father's love that refused to die no matter how deeply he tried to bury it. "I know my son," Vader said quietly. "I trained him, fought him, failed to turn him. He believes there is still good in me, light side weakness that clouds his judgment. That belief will be his undoing, and Picard's." "Perhaps," Thrawn allowed, "but do not underestimate them, Lord Vader. I made that mistake at our first engagement and they escaped because I failed to account for factors outside my tactical models. The Force is one such factor. Their principles, their willingness to sacrifice tactical advantage for moral conviction, is another. Combined, they create unpredictability that even I find challenging to counter." "Then we ensure there is no escape," Vader said with dark finality. "We trap them in a scenario where every choice leads to defeat. We break their ship, their crew, and their precious principles. And when Picard kneels before me, broken and defeated, I will show him what happens to those who dare oppose the Empire, even an empire reduced to fragments. The lesson will echo throughout this galaxy for generations. Hope is an illusion. Freedom is weakness, and the dark side always wins." Thrawn studied Vader for a long moment, those alien red eyes seeing past the armor to the broken, rage-fueled being beneath. "Lord Vader, may I offer one observation? You seek to destroy Enterprise because you believe it represents proof that your choices were wrong, that the path you chose, the dark side, the Empire, the sacrifice of everything you were, was not inevitable. You need their failure to validate your own decisions. But consider, what if you succeed? What if you destroy them utterly, prove principles are weakness and power is all that matters? You will be victorious, yes, but you will also have eliminated the last beings in the galaxy who believed there was still good in Darth Vader, including your son." The medical bay fell silent save for Vader's labored breathing. Thrawn had touched something raw, had articulated a truth that the dark side couldn't fully suppress. If Vader destroyed Enterprise, killed Picard and his crew of principled idealists, murdered Luke for the weakness of believing his father could be redeemed, he would prove everything Anakin Skywalker had feared about himself: that the monster was real, that the darkness had won completely, that nothing of the Jedi Knight remained but bitter ash. But that moment of doubt, that flicker of the light side trying to surface, was immediately crushed under the weight of decades of dark side conditioning and fresh rage at his own weakness. "I am not Anakin Skywalker," Vader said, his voice hollow through the vocabulator. "That man died on Mustafar, destroyed by his own weakness and the Jedi's betrayal. I am what remains: power without sentiment, strength without mercy. And I will prove that the galaxy belongs to those willing to seize it, not to those who cower behind principles and hope. Enterprise will fall, Picard will die, and the lesson will be absolute: the dark side is stronger." Thrawn bowed slightly, accepting the finality of Vader's conviction. "Then we proceed as planned. 3 days, Lord Vader. The hunt ends at Balmorra. After Thrawn departed, Vader remained in his back-to-tank, staring at Enterprise's holographic image with eyes that burned yellow with dark side corruption. Through the Force, he reached out across light years, searching for the kyber signature he'd learned to track, the crystals integrated into the unknown vessel systems. And he found them, felt them, touched them with the dark side's corrosive presence and felt them recoil in something approximating terror. Yes, they feared him, as well they should. Vader's rage flowed through the Force like poison through water, reaching toward those crystals, wrapping around them, promising that destruction was coming, that no technology, no principles, no hope would save them from the hunter in the dark. In 3 days, Captain Jean-Luc Picard would learn what every being in this galaxy eventually discovered. The dark side was not just a philosophy or a power. It was inevitability. It was entropy. It was the heat death of hope itself. And Darth Vader was its avatar. Let them come to Balmorra. Let them try to save billions. Let them struggle and sacrifice and cling to their precious Federation principles. In the end, the darkness would swallow them all. Did you feel that? The darkness closing in. Vader's not just hunting them, he's corrupting their ship from the inside out. And you haven't even seen Thrawn's trap yet. If you're not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Part 3 is going to be insane. Hit that button now, then keep watching, because the next section shows Enterprise walking straight into the trap. The diplomatic shuttle descended through Balmorra's industrial atmosphere, carrying New Republic negotiators toward what should have been a routine meeting with planetary leadership. From Enterprise's orbit, Picard watched the shuttle's trajectory while trying to ignore the growing sense of unease that had plagued him for the past 72 hours. Captain, Data reported from Ops, his android precision unable to mask what even he recognized as troubling data. I am detecting increasing instability in the kyber crystal matrix. The resonance frequency has deteriorated by 37% in the past hour. At this rate, we will lose warp capability within 6 hours. Cause, Picard demanded, though he already suspected the answer. Unknown by conventional analysis. However, Counselor Troy's empathic readings correlate directly with the crystal's destabilization. As her perception of what she describes as approaching darkness intensifies, the crystal's quantum coherence degrades proportionally. From her seat beside the captain's chair, Troy looked pale and drawn, her empathic abilities overwhelmed by a presence in the Force that felt like standing at the edge of an abyss. He's close, Captain, Vader. I can feel his rage like a physical weight. And the crystals, she shuddered. They're screaming, not audibly but through the Force. They sense what's coming and they're terrified. Worf's growl rumbled from tactical. Captain, if the crystals fail during combat, we lose our primary advantage. I recommend we withdraw Enterprise from this system immediately and effect repairs in a secure location. It was tactically sound advice, but Picard looked at the viewscreen showing Balmorra's gray-brown industrial surface, 8 billion beings living their lives, unaware that their world had become a potential battlefield. The New Republic negotiations were critical. Balmorra's industrial capacity could tip the balance in the struggle against Imperial remnants, and Enterprise's presence was the only guarantee that Imperial forces wouldn't simply bombard the negotiators from orbit. We maintain position, Picard decided, feeling the weight of competing obligations. But go to yellow alert. Mr. Worf, I want continuous tactical sweeps. If anything larger than a probe droid enters this system, I want to know immediately. Aye, Captain. In engineering, Geordi LaForge was having the worst day of his professional career. The kyber crystal matrix, his pride and joy, the elegant solution that had saved Enterprise and enhanced their capabilities beyond anything Federation engineers had dreamed possible, was dying before his eyes. Through his visor, he could see the quantum-level deterioration. The crystal's normally harmonious energy patterns had become chaotic, discordant, as if something was deliberately disrupting their natural resonance. He tried every remedy in his considerable engineering repertoire, retuning the containment fields, adjusting the matter-antimatter mix, even briefly disconnecting the crystals entirely to see if isolation would help. Nothing worked. Whatever was affecting the crystals operated on principles that Federation science couldn't measure or counter. "Talk to me, Data," Geordi said into his comm badge, desperation creeping into his voice. "You're the only one aboard who can process variables that don't make conventional sense. What am I missing?" Data's response came through with his characteristic precision. "Commander, I believe the crystals are experiencing what might be termed a Force-based attack. Darth Vader's presence in the Force is sufficiently powerful that it generates what could be described as dark side radiation. The kyber crystals, being Force-sensitive, are reacting to this radiation the way living beings react to poison. They are attempting to reject the contamination, but doing so requires them to alter their quantum state in ways incompatible with our warp field equations. So Vader is literally poisoning our warp drive just by existing near us. That is an accurate if simplified description, yes. The crystals cannot simultaneously attune to our ship systems and protect themselves from dark side corruption. They must choose one or the other. Currently, they are prioritizing self-preservation, which manifests as the instability you are observing." Geordi stared at the pulsing, sickly matrix and felt the frustration of an engineer facing a problem that had no technical solution. Is there any way to shield them? Some kind of Force-based protection? Luke Skywalker may be able to provide temporary relief through light side intervention. However, he cannot maintain such protection indefinitely, and the energy required would leave him vulnerable during any confrontation with his father. It was a no-win scenario dressed up in technical language. They could protect their warp drive or protect their only Force user, not both, and Picard would have to choose which vulnerability to accept. On the bridge, that choice was rapidly approaching, as Worf's tactical display lit up with contacts that made every officer's blood run cold. "Captain, multiple vessels emerging from hyperspace." Worf's voice carried the controlled urgency of a warrior recognizing superior numbers. "Configuration, Imperial Star Destroyers. Count, 6, no, 8, 12. Captain, I am reading 40 Imperial capital ships plus support craft. They are surrounding this system in a spherical formation. We are completely encircled." The view screen shifted to show the Imperial fleet's deployment, a textbook encirclement that left no avenue for escape. And at the formation center, one star destroyer that radiated menace even through the visual display. The Asterisk Devastator, Vader's personal flagship. "Red alert," Picard commanded, his voice cutting through the bridge's rising tension. "All hands to battle stations. Mr. Data, hail the flagship. Let's find out what they want before assuming the worst." "Already receiving a transmission, Captain. It is addressed to you personally. Source, Devastator. The sender identifies himself as Darth Vader," Picard finished, feeling the moment crystallize with terrible clarity. On screen. The view screen shifted to show the medical bay aboard Asterisk Devastator Asterisk, and for the first time, Picard looked directly at the being who'd haunted Luke's nightmares and terrorized a galaxy. Vader hung in a bacta tank, his armor cracked and scorched, respirator wheezing with mechanical difficulty. But those eyes, yellow, burning with hatred that transcended the physical, locked onto Picard with an intensity that made the captain understand viscerally what Luke had tried to explain. This wasn't just a military commander or a political opponent. This was darkness incarnate, rage given form, the dark side of the Force concentrated into a single, implacable will bent on destruction. "Captain Picard." Voice echoed through the bridge, hollow and rasping but carrying absolute authority. "I am Dark Lord of the and rightful inheritor of Imperial authority. You and your vessel have interfered in galactic affairs that do not concern you. You have aided terrorists, stolen Imperial resources, and contributed to the death of Emperor. For these crimes, you will surrender your ship immediately." Picard stood, facing with the dignity that had carried him through countless diplomatic crises. "Lord, I am Captain Picard of the United Federation of Planets. Enterprise is not subject to Imperial authority. We are explorers displaced from our home, seeking only the resources necessary to survive and the opportunity to return. We have no quarrel with you personally." "You have no quarrel," laugh was a bitter, mechanical sound. "You destroyed the Death Star. You corrupted my son with your principles. You represent everything the Empire was created to suppress: weakness disguised as morality, chaos disguised as freedom. Your very existence is an insult to order and strength. I will accept only one outcome: your complete and unconditional surrender." "And if we refuse?" Gestured, and the split to show multiple feeds from surface, cities, factories, residential districts where billions of beings lived their ordinary lives. "Then I will begin orbital bombardment of in 1 hour. 8 billion lives, Captain. Men, women, children, all dead because you valued your principles over their survival. I will reduce every city to rubble, every factory to slag, every living being to ash. And it will be your fault for refusing to do the logical thing." The bridge fell silent as the full horror of the trap became clear. It wasn't just threatening. He was forcing Picard to choose between Federation principles and mass murder, knowing that either choice would destroy something essential. Surrender and Enterprise, the Federation's representative in this galaxy, would fall to tyranny, proving that principles were negotiable when enough lives were at stake. Refuse, and Picard would be responsible for genocide on a scale that would haunt him forever, assuming he survived. Moved beside Picard, voice low but urgent. "Captain, he's bluffing. He has to be. Even the Empire wouldn't kill 8 billion people just to capture one ship." "You don't know," said from where he stood at the rear of the bridge, his face ashen as he felt his father's darkness pressing against the ship like a physical weight. "He's not bluffing. He's absolutely capable of this. He's destroyed entire worlds for less. And right now, with the Emperor dead and the Empire fractured, he has nothing left but rage. He'll do it, Captain, without hesitation." "Then we evacuate," Beverly said, her medical officer's instincts demanding she save lives. "Use the transporters. Start beaming people up to Enterprise, to the new Republic ships in orbit, anywhere we can put them." "Impossible," Data interjected, his android brain processing the mathematics with ruthless precision. "Even operating all transporter rooms simultaneously at maximum capacity, we could evacuate approximately 2 million beings per hour. 8 billion would require 400 hours of continuous operation. We do not have that time." Gasped, her hand flying to her temple as another wave of dark side presence washed over her empathic senses. "Captain, the crystals. I can feel them. They're responding to threat. They're trying to help us, trying to generate enough power for mass evacuation, but they can't sustain it. They're already damaged from his presence. If we push them now." "The warp core will breach," voice came through from engineering, confirming empathic perception with hard engineering data. "Captain, I'm reading cascade failures throughout the Matrix. Whatever doing his presence in the Force, his dark side energy, it's tearing the crystals apart at a quantum level. If we try to use them for massive transporter operations, the entire Matrix will destabilize. We're talking catastrophic antimatter breach. The ship wouldn't just lose power, it would explode." The trap was perfect. Thrawn's tactical genius combined with Vodka's dark side power had created a scenario where every option led to disaster. Surrender meant betraying everything Stufflet stood for. Evacuation meant destroying Enterprise and still leaving billions to die. Fighting meant facing 40 capital ships with a warp drive that was actively failing. And underlying it all, Vodka's presence in the Force, his hatred, his rage, his absolute conviction that darkness would triumph, was corrupting their greatest advantage from within. Picard felt the weight of command pressing down with crushing force. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders, for the brilliant solution that would save everyone. But for the first time in his career, Picard couldn't see one. Every tactical analysis, every strategic option, every ethical framework he'd spent decades perfecting, all of it inadequate against an enemy who operated outside the rules that governed civilized conflict. "Mr. Wuff," Picard said quietly, "analysis. Can we fight our way out?" Wuff's response was immediate and brutally honest. "No, Captain. Even at full capacity, we could not defeat 40 capital ships. With our warp drive compromised, we cannot escape. With our weapons limited by your standing orders not to maximize casualties, we cannot inflict sufficient damage to create an opening. We are trapped." "Captain," came a new voice. Grand Admiral Thrawn, his blue face appearing in a second window on the Vyuskran beside Vudka's medical bay. "I admire your principles truly, but principles without power are merely pretty words. You face an impossible choice. Surrender and preserve your crew's lives, or fight and ensure everyone dies, your crew, the Balmorra population, everyone. There is no third option, no clever tactical solution, no diplomatic miracle, just a choice between survival and extinction." Picard met Thrawn's glowing red eyes, seeing the cold calculation behind them. The Grand Admiral wasn't gloating. He was stating facts, presenting an equation where every variable had been accounted for and eliminated. This was what it looked like when you faced someone smarter than you, with better resources and fewer ethical constraints. "You have 30 minutes to decide," Thrawn continued. "After that, Lord Vudka begins bombardment. And Captain Picard, I genuinely hope you choose wisely. I would very much like to study your vessel intact. It would be a shame to destroy such a remarkable achievement of engineering simply because you were too proud to accept reality." The transmission cut off, leaving Enterprise's bridge in silence, broken only by the red alert klaxons and the distant hum of stressed systems. Lucca moved to stand beside Picard's chair, his presence in the Force a small light against the overwhelming darkness pressing in from all sides. "Captain, there might be another option. Let me go to him. Let me face my father alone. Maybe I can reach the light side in him again. Maybe I can end this without bloodshed." "Absolutely not," Picard said firmly. "Mr. Skywalker, I appreciate the offer, but I will not sacrifice you in the hope that Vudka's redemption is possible. You tried that at Endor, and he's here threatening genocide. Whatever light remained in him has been extinguished by rage." "Or maybe it's still there, buried deeper," Lucca insisted. "The Force works in ways we don't understand. My masters always said that no one is beyond redemption, that the light side is always stronger than the dark if you have faith. Captain, you talk about Federation principles, about the inherent dignity of all beings, about hope triumphing over despair. Well, this is where those principles are tested. Do you believe redemption is possible, or are you willing to write off my father as irredeemable? Because if you do, if you decide some beings are beyond saving, then you're accepting the same darkness he represents." Picard stared at Lucca, seeing the young Jedi's absolute conviction and recognizing it as both admirable and potentially suicidal. "Mr. Skywalker, even if I agreed with your assessment, and I'm not certain I do, sending you alone into Vudka's hands gives him exactly what he wants. Your leverage. He'll use you against us, torture you to force our surrender, or worse, turn you to the dark side and use your power to destroy us." "Then we're back to the same problem," Rucka said, frustration evident. "We can't fight, we can't evacuate, we can't negotiate, and we can't surrender. Captain, there has to be something we're missing. Some tactical advantage, some technical solution." "There isn't," Data interrupted, his android honesty cutting through desperate hope. "I have analyzed every scenario. Given our current capabilities versus their deployed forces, combined with the warp drive's instability and Lord Vudka's force-based advantages, our probability of victory is 0.003%. That figure accounts for random chance and unforeseen variables, but it is statistically equivalent to impossible." The bridge fell silent as Data's mathematical certainty eliminated the last refuge of desperate planning. In engineering, Juddy stared at the dying Kuba matrix and felt an engineer's despair at a beautiful system failing despite his best efforts. The crystals pulsed with erratic, terrified energy. They wanted to help, wanted to save the ship and crew they'd bonded with, but they were drowning in dark side corruption that turned their greatest strength into fatal weakness. "I'm sorry," Juddy whispered to the crystals, knowing intellectually they couldn't understand human language, but hopping the force might convey his regret. "I'm so sorry. You've given us everything, and now we're watching you die because we can't protect you from something we don't even understand." The crystals pulsed once faintly, as if acknowledging his words. And in that pulse, Juddy felt, not heard, not thought, but felt, something that approximated communication. Not words, not language, but pure emotion transmitted through the force connection the crystals had formed with Enterprise's crew over 3 months of integration. Not dying, transforming, choosing. Juddy's eyes widened. "Data, get down to engineering. Now, I think the crystals are trying to tell us something." The crystals are alive. They're CHOOSING. And what they're about to do will change this battle completely. You think you know where this is going. You don't. If you're not subscribed, do it now, because the next section is when Enterprise makes its stand. And trust me, you've never seen Star Trek do what's about to happen. Keep watching. Data materialized in engineering via emergency site-to-site transport, his android processing immediately registering the changed atmosphere. The kyber crystal matrix no longer pulsed with the sickly, erratic energy of corruption. Instead, it had gone completely still, not dead, but dormant, as if gathering strength for something that required absolute focus. "Commander LaForge, report," Data said, moving to stand beside Geordi at the warp core's primary control station. "Data, look at this." Geordi pulled up quantum-level scans of the crystal's internal structure. "They've stopped trying to fight Vader's influence. They've just stopped. But it's not surrender. Look at the resonance patterns. They're organizing, restructuring at a molecular level. It's like they're preparing for something." Data's positronic brain processed the data with speeds that made human computation look glacial. "Fascinating. The crystals appear to be entering a state analogous to what organic beings might call meditation. They are not resisting the dark side energy. They are absorbing it, channeling it, attempting to transform it through some process I do not fully understand." "The Force," came Luke's voice from the engineering entrance. He'd left the bridge without orders, drawn by the same intuition that had guided him through a dozen impossible situations. "They're using the Force itself. Dark and light aren't just opposites, they're parts of a whole. The Jedi teachings say the Force seeks balance. The crystals feel Vader's darkness, and they're trying to balance it by becoming conduits for something else." "Light side energy?" Geordi asked hopefully. "Not exactly." Luke approached the warp core, his force sensitivity allowing him to perceive what the instruments could only measure indirectly. "They're becoming neutral, pure. They're stripping away the distinction between light and dark and returning to what kyber crystals were before the Jedi or Sith ever used them. Raw force potential without moral alignment." "And what does that mean for our warp drive?" Geordi asked, already dreading the answer. Luke closed his eyes, reaching out through the Force to touch the crystal's transformed state. What he felt made him gasp, not in horror but in awe. "They're offering you a choice. They can maintain your warp drive as it currently exists, stable, reliable Federation technology enhanced by Force sensitivity. But that means they remain vulnerable to Vader's corruption. Or," he paused, struggling to articulate something that transcended language, "or they can fully integrate with the Force, become something new that bridges your technology and this galaxy's mystical energy. You'd have power beyond anything Federation science has achieved, but you'd also be fundamentally connected to the Force itself. Every choice, every action, every battle, the Force would be watching, judging, potentially influencing your decisions." Data's golden eyes met Geordi's. The crystals are asking us to accept a symbiotic relationship where we are no longer observers in this galaxy, but participants in its fundamental nature. It is, in essence, the opposite of the Prime Directive, total integration rather than careful separation. "Captain needs to make this decision," Geordi said, reaching for his comm badge. But before he could activate it, the ship rocked violently as weapons fire hammered their shields. On the bridge, Worf's tactical display lit up with hostile contacts. "Captain, Devastator is firing. Multiple turbolaser batteries targeting our shields. They are testing our defenses before committing to full assault." "Return fire," Picard ordered, making the combat decision even as his mind raced through the impossible strategic situation. "Phasers only, precision targeting. Disable their weapons but avoid casualties." Enterprise's amber phaser beams lanced out with characteristic Federation precision, each shot calculated to overload a turbolaser battery's power coupling without penetrating to crew spaces. It was the kind of surgical warfare that Starfleet had perfected, maximum effect with minimum loss of life. But precision took time, and while Enterprise disabled 3 weapon systems, Devastator had 40 more still firing, and 39 other capital ships were beginning their attack runs. "Shields at 78%, Worf reported. "At this rate of bombardment, we have approximately 23 minutes before shield failure." 23 minutes, less than half of Vader's original deadline. Thrawn had calculated this perfectly, giving Picard just enough time to feel hope slipping away while maintaining constant pressure that eliminated any chance for clever tactical solutions. Picard stood, moving to the view screen where Balmorra's gray-brown surface dominated the visual field. 8 billion lives. The numbers were too large to truly comprehend. His mind kept trying to reduce them to something manageable, to think of it as 8,000 or 800 or just 8. But every reduction was a lie. 8 billion individual beings, each with hopes and families and futures that would end in nuclear fire if he made the wrong choice. "Counselor," he said quietly, "what do you sense from Vader? Is there any possibility Luke is right, that some part of him can be reached?" Troy closed her eyes, her empathic abilities stretched to their absolute limit as she touched the vast darkness that was Vader's presence in the Force. What she found made her shudder. "Captain, there's light there, buried so deep I almost can't sense it, but it exists. A tiny spark of Anakin Skywalker still fighting against the darkness. But," she opened her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "The rage is overwhelming. He wants to be saved, but he wants to destroy you more. Both impulses exist simultaneously, and right now, the darkness is stronger." "Then we appeal to that light," Luke said via comm badge from engineering, having heard the bridge conversation. "Captain, let me go to him. Let me try one more time to reach my father before this becomes mass murder. The Force brought us together for a reason. Maybe this is it." Before Picard could respond, a new voice cut across all channels, Thrawn, his cultured tones carrying satisfaction that made Picard's blood run cold. "Captain Picard, I've been monitoring your internal communications. Yes, your systems have vulnerabilities I've been exploiting since our first engagement. I know about the kyber crystal's transformation. I know Luke Skywalker is proposing to sacrifice himself, and I know you're running out of time." Thrawn's image appeared on a secondary screen, his red eyes gleaming with the satisfaction of a chess master who just announced checkmate. "But there's something you should know about this entire scenario. Lord Vader and I didn't come here just to capture your ship. We came to eliminate you as a factor in galactic politics permanently. And we've succeeded, regardless of your choice." "Explain," Picard demanded, feeling the trap within the trap beginning to reveal itself. "Simple mathematics, Captain. If you surrender, we capture Enterprise and gain access to technology that will allow Imperial remnant forces to crush the New Republic within months. Your transporters, your shields, your warp drive, reverse-engineered and mass-produced, they would make us unstoppable. The New Republic knows this, which is why they will never trust you again. You become a liability to be eliminated. Thrawn's smile was slight but genuine. And if you refuse to surrender, if you fight and die here, or worse, if you watch us bombard Balmorra and live with that guilt, the New Republic will blame you for those deaths. The galaxy will remember that 8 billion beings died because the Great Federation starship chose principles over pragmatism. Either way, you are finished as a political force. Your precious Federation's reputation, built on moral superiority and principled action, will be forever tainted by your choice here. The elegant cruelty of it struck Picard like a physical blow. Thrawn hadn't just set a tactical trap. He'd created a strategic situation where victory was impossible by definition. Every choice, every path forward, led to the destruction of everything Enterprise represented. You planned this from the beginning, Picard said, recognition dawning. The fleet positioning, the ultimatum, the timing, all of it calculated to produce this exact scenario where our principles become our destruction. Of course, Thrawn said simply. You are bound by ethics that I am not. That gives me infinite advantages. You cannot use overwhelming force. You cannot accept mass casualties. You cannot sacrifice billions for tactical advantage. These limitations make you predictable, Captain, and predictable enemies can be defeated through superior preparation. Riker's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. So this entire assault is just to prove that ethics are weakness. That's what this is about. Not to prove, Commander, to demonstrate. The galaxy is watching this confrontation. Every New Republic system, every neutral world, every Imperial remnant, all of them are seeing what happens when high-minded principles meet practical power. I'm teaching a lesson that will echo for generations. Might makes right, principles are negotiable, and those who refuse to accept this reality are swept aside by those who do. In engineering, Geordi watched the kyber crystals pulse with increasing intensity. They'd completed their transformation, and now they were waiting, offering their choice to Enterprise, demanding a decision that would fundamentally alter the ship's relationship to this galaxy. Data, Geordi said urgently, we're out of time. The crystals are ready, but using them, fully integrating with the Force like they're offering, it means we become part of this galaxy's conflict in ways the Prime Directive never contemplated. We won't be observers or even reluctant participants. We'll be agents of the Force itself. Data's android mind processed implications at computational speeds, which means our choices would no longer be purely strategic or ethical. The Force, this mystical energy that connects all living things, would become a factor in every decision. We would be guided by something beyond logic or principle. Is that better or worse than what we have now? Geordi asked desperately. Unknown, but it is certainly different, and different may be all we have left. On the bridge, Picard watched as Vader's deadline ticked toward 0, 12 minutes remaining. The shields were at 63%. Balmorra's 8 billion inhabitants went about their lives, unaware that their existence hung on a decision one displaced Starfleet captain was struggling to make. Captain, Worf said, his warrior's pragmatism cutting through philosophical debate, we have one potential advantage Thrawn may not have accounted for. Luke Skywalker, the Force. If we allow him to confront Vader while we engage Thrawn's fleet, it creates two simultaneous battles that divide their focus. You're suggesting we use Luke as a distraction, Beverly said, horror evident in her voice. Send him to his father as bait while we fight our way out. I'm suggesting we use every resource available, Worf countered. Luke has stated repeatedly that confronting his father is necessary. Perhaps we should trust his judgment about the Force, just as he trusts our judgment about tactics. Luke's voice came through from engineering, having heard the exchange. Worf is right. Captain, the Force has been guiding me toward this confrontation since we arrived at Balmorra. I can feel it. This is the moment everything has been building toward. not just for your ship or this battle, but for the galaxy itself. The balance point between light and dark. Picard felt the weight of competing philosophies pressing down. The Federation taught non-interference, but also resistance to tyranny. Starfleet valued life above victory, but also understood that sometimes sacrifice was necessary. And now, displaced in a galaxy governed by a mystical force that transcended Federation science, he had to decide whether to trust something he didn't fully understand. "Mr. LaForge," Picard said, making the command decision that would define everything that followed, "inform the kyber crystals that we accept their offer. Full integration with the Force. We'll deal with the consequences later. Right now, we need power." "Aye, Captain. Initiating integration now." In engineering, the kyber crystal matrix erupted with light, not the sickly glow of corruption or the healthy luminescence of stable systems, but something entirely new. Pure, white radiance that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, visible to both the eye and to Force-sensitive perception. The crystals sang. There was no other word for it. They generated harmonic frequencies that resonated through Enterprise's structure, through the crew's bodies, through the fabric of space-time itself. And as they sang, they transformed the ship around them. The warp core's power output tripled, then quadrupled, energy flowing through systems that adapted in real time to handle loads that should have burned them out instantly. The shields, already formidable, became something more. Barriers that existed partially in normal space and partially in the Force itself, creating defenses that didn't just absorb energy, but redirected it through dimensional channels that Thrawn's weapons had never been designed to counter. And throughout the ship, every crew member felt it, a connection to something vast and ancient, a presence in their minds that wasn't intrusive but undeniably there. The Force, making itself known to beings who'd spent their lives in a universe where it didn't exist. Data experienced it as a cascading series of probability calculations that exceeded his positronic processing capacity, futures branching and converging according to laws that transcended logic. Troy felt it as an ocean of emotion vast enough to drown galaxies, every living being's feelings connected in a web of empathic resonance. Worf sensed it as the ultimate opponent, something that couldn't be defeated through strength, but might be challenged through honor. And Picard felt the weight of a billion choices made by a billion beings across a billion years, all pressing down on this single moment. The Force didn't speak in words, didn't issue commands or demands, but it conveyed something that transcended language. Choice matters. Every decision echoes, and what happens next will shape destinies beyond your comprehension. "Captain," Data's voice carried a strange quality, all perhaps if androids could experience such things. "The kyber integration is complete. I am reading power levels 300% above our previous maximum. Shields are..." "Captain, I do not have adequate terminology. They exist partially outside normal spacetime. Thrawn's weapons are still impacting us, but the damage is being dispersed across dimensional barriers I cannot fully measure." "Warp drive status. Fully operational and enhanced. We can achieve speeds that exceed both traditional warp velocity and this galaxy's hyperspace travel. Captain, we have become something between a Federation starship and a Force-enhanced vessel. I do not know what category Enterprise falls into anymore." Picard felt the truth of Data's words. Enterprise wasn't just a ship anymore. It was a hybrid, Federation technology married to this galaxy's mystical energy, a bridge between two fundamentally different understandings of reality. They'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "Mr. Worf, target the Devastator S shield generators. Full phaser spread. Let's show them what we've become." The phasers that lanced from Enterprise's arrays were different now. Amber energy channeled through Force-enhanced conduits, beams that didn't just carry destructive power but carried intention itself. They struck Devastator S shields with force that made Vader's massive Star Destroyer rock in space, overloading systems that had been designed to withstand anything the Rebel Alliance could throw at them. "Direct hit," Worf reported, something approaching satisfaction in his voice. "Their forward shields have collapsed completely. Devastator is, Captain, they are launching boarding craft. Multiple Imperial shuttles on approach vectors." "Vader," Luke said, his Force senses screaming warnings. "He's coming. He felt the kyber transformation and he's coming to stop it, to destroy the crystals before they can stabilize fully. Captain, he's going to board Enterprise." Picard met Luke's eyes across the subspace channel connecting bridge to engineering. "Then we let him. Mr. Skywalker, you wanted to confront your father. You believe redemption is possible. The Force has given us the power to survive this encounter. Now use it to prove your conviction. Face Darth Vader and show us whether light really is stronger than darkness." Luke's expression mixed fear with determination. "I'll need help. Vader is too powerful for me alone, even with the Force." "You'll have it," Worf growled. "I have been waiting to face this Dark Lord in honorable combat. A Klingon warrior and a Jedi Knight against the Empire's greatest weapon. This will be a battle worthy of song." "And me," Troy added, her empathic abilities now enhanced by the Force connection to levels she'd never imagined possible. "If there's light still buried in Vader, I can sense it, amplify it. Maybe between us, we can reach Anakin Skywalker before Darth Vader destroys us all." Picard stood, feeling the Force flowing through his ship, his crew, and in some strange way through himself. "Make it so, and Mr. Skywalker, may the Force be with you, all of you." As Enterprise's enhanced shields absorbed fire that should have destroyed them, as Luke, Worf, and Troy prepared to face the galaxy's most terrifying warrior, as Thrawn watched from the Chimera with calculations racing through his tactical genius mind, the battle for Enterprise's soul and the galaxy's future was about to begin in earnest. The Force had brought them to this moment. Now it would judge whether they were worthy of the power it had granted. And in his back-to-tank aboard Devastator, Vader felt the kyber transformation through the Force and smiled behind his broken mask. They thought power would save them. They'd made themselves stronger. But strength meant nothing to the dark side. The stronger they became, the more spectacular their fall would be when he broke them. Let them hope. Hope made the darkness sweeter when it finally consumed everything. The crystals chose. Enterprise is something new now, part Federation, part Force, and Vader just launched his boarding assault. The next section, Luke versus Vader, Worf versus the dark side, and Picard facing the choice that will decide everything. You cannot miss this. Hit subscribe now or you'll regret it when part 3 drops. Keep watching, the battle is just beginning. The Imperial boarding craft punched through the chaos of battle, their armored hulls absorbing phaser fire that would have vaporized standard shuttles. Inside, Vader stood among his 501st Legion, elite stormtroopers who'd served him for decades, who followed without question because they'd seen what happened to those who hesitated. But Vader barely registered their presence. His focus, his entire being, was concentrated on the ship ahead, Enterprise, now pulsing with Force energy that made it visible to his dark side perception like a beacon of impossible light. The kyber crystals had transformed, had accepted full integration, and in doing so had created something that shouldn't exist, a vessel that bridged the technological and the mystical. Through the Force, Vader could feel Luke waiting. His son, the Jedi, the one person in the galaxy who still believed Anakin Skywalker could be saved. That belief was weakness. That hope was delusion. And Vader would prove it by destroying everything Luke held dear, starting with the ship that represented everything the light side pretended to offer: exploration, peace, principles. The boarding craft's magnetic locks clamped onto Enterprise's hull with metallic finality. Cutting torches began burning through durasteel plating reinforced by Federation technology, but still vulnerable to the Empire's brutal efficiency. In 90 seconds, they would breach. In 2 minutes, Vader would be inside. and then the real battle would begin. In Enterprise's main corridor outside the breach point, Luke Skywalker stood with his lightsaber ignited, its green blade humming with Force energy. Beside him, Worf held a bat'leth, the traditional Klingon blade that the security chief had insisted on for this confrontation. Energy weapons would be useless against Vader's Force abilities, but cold steel wielded with honor might give them an edge. And flanking them both, Counselor Troi stood with no weapons at all, only her empathic abilities enhanced to impossible levels by the Force connection the kyber crystals had granted. She could feel Vader's approach like a tsunami of darkness, but she could also feel something else, that tiny spark Luke insisted existed, that ember of light buried under decades of hate. "Captain," Worf said into his comm badge, his voice carrying the calm of a warrior who'd accepted death and found peace in the prospect of honorable combat. "They are breaching. Estimate 90 seconds until hostile entry." Picard's voice came through from the bridge, steady despite the chaos of fleet combat raging around them. "Acknowledged. Remember, your objective is not to kill Vader. It's to give Luke the opportunity to reach him. Everything else is secondary." "Understood, Captain." Worf adjusted his grip on the bat'leth, feeling its weight settle into familiar combat rhythms. He'd faced Borg drones, Romulan warriors, even holographic Klingon legends in training simulations. But this was different. This was facing evil incarnate armed with powers that transcended physics. It would be glorious. The hull plating exploded inward with a shriek of tortured metal. Stormtroopers poured through the breach, their white armor stark against Enterprise's gray corridors. They moved with military precision, establishing firing positions, sweeping for targets with weapons raised. But they hesitated when they saw the reception committee, a Jedi with lightsaber ignited, a Klingon warrior in a Starfleet uniform holding an archaic blade, and a Betazoid counselor who radiated something that made their targeting instincts scream warnings. And then Vader emerged. He had to duck slightly to fit through the breach, his towering frame made more imposing by the cape that swirled around him like liquid darkness. His respirator wheezed its mechanical rhythm, each breath a reminder of the broken being inside the armor. And his eyes, those yellow, corrupted eyes, fixed on Luke with an intensity that made reality itself seem to warp around his gaze. "My son," Vader's voice echoed through the corridor, hollow and rasping, yet somehow carrying across every deck of the ship through Force amplification. "You have made yourself the guardian of these explorers, these beings who claim principles matter more than power. I am here to teach you the truth. Principles are lies we tell ourselves to avoid accepting the darkness we all carry inside." Luke's lightsaber remained steady despite the fear coursing through him. "Father, I know you're in there. I felt you at Endor in the throne room when you saved me from the Emperor. That wasn't Darth Vader. That was Anakin Skywalker choosing love over hate. I'm asking you to make that choice again. Stand down. End this madness before more people die." Vader's laugh was bitter machinery grinding against itself. Anakin Skywalker was weak. He loved, and love destroyed him. He had compassion, and compassion made him vulnerable. He believed in the Jedi Code, and the Jedi abandoned him when he needed them most. I am what remains when weakness is burned away. Pure power, pure purpose, pure strength. "Your pure pain," Troi said quietly, her empathic senses perceiving the truth beneath Vader's words. "You're drowning in suffering so profound it's become your identity. You believe if you stop hating, stop destroying, the pain will consume you. But you're wrong. The pain is consuming you right now, every second, and the only escape is to stop running from it." Vader's attention shifted to Troi, and she felt the full weight of the dark side's regard like standing naked before a black hole. "You presume to understand me, Betazoid. You sense emotions and think that grants wisdom. Let me show you what emotion truly means in the dark side." He raised his hand, and Troi gasped as Force-enhanced pain lanced through her nervous system. Not physical injury, but pure suffering channeled directly into her empathic centers. Every ounce of Vader's rage, his self-hatred, his endless grief for Padme and everything he destroyed, all of it flooding into Troy's consciousness simultaneously. She screamed, collapsing to her knees as her mind struggled to process agony that transcended anything biological evolution had prepared her to handle. "No," Luke lunged forward, lightsaber cutting toward Vader with speed enhanced by the Force. But Vader's own blade, red as spilled blood, humming with dark side energy, ignited and blocked the strike with contemptuous ease. "Good," Vader said, his respirator's rhythm never changing despite the combat. "Let your anger fuel you, my son. Feel the hate. Let it make you strong. Strike me down and take your place at my side as we rebuild the Empire stronger than before." Father and son clashed in a fury of lightsaber combat that moved too fast for normal human perception. Green and red blades created patterns of light in Enterprise's corridors, each strike carrying not just physical force but force itself. Light side versus dark, redemption versus corruption, hope versus despair. Worf watched the Jedi combat for 3 seconds, recognized that he couldn't match those speeds, and made a tactical decision that would have horrified Starfleet tactical instructors. He charged directly at Vader's blind side, bat'leth raised, roaring a Klingon battle cry that echoed with the fury of 1,000 years of warrior culture. Vader sensed the attack. The Force granted him awareness of threats from all directions, but he made a critical miscalculation. He'd faced countless opponents in his decades as a Sith Lord. Jedi, assassins, would-be heroes, all of them had fallen before his power. But Worf was something new. A being from a universe where the Force didn't exist, whose warrior culture valued honor over survival, who fought not with fear or desperation, but with the absolute conviction that death in battle was the highest glory a warrior could achieve. The bat'leth's curved blade struck Vader's armor at the shoulder joint, where mechanical components met organic flesh. It didn't penetrate. Vader's reflexes were too fast, his force-enhanced perception allowing him to turn the killing blow into a glancing strike. But it accomplished something no one had managed in years. It made Darth Vader stagger. The Dark Lord recovered instantly, his free hand extending toward Worf with force lightning crackling between his fingers. Raw dark side energy that had destroyed Jedi Masters and reduced rebel soldiers to ash. But the Force lightning struck and grounded harmlessly through the Klingon's metallic uniform components. The weapon, forged in Klingon tradition and never designed to interact with this galaxy's mystical energy, somehow acted as a Force insulator, conducting the dark side's power away from body and dispersing it into the deck plating. Surprise lasted only a microsecond, but in combat at these speeds, microseconds mattered. Lightsaber found an opening, striking chest plate with enough force to scorch the armor and send the Dark Lord stumbling backward. "You fight well," acknowledged, his respirator compensating for the hit's impact on his damaged chest. "Better than I expected, but you still do not understand what you face. I'm not merely a warrior or a Force user. I am hate given form. I am every dark choice, every moment of weakness embraced, every principle abandoned for power. You cannot defeat me because defeating me would require you to become me." "No," said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion already setting in. "Defeating you requires us to be better than you, to prove that light is stronger than darkness, that love matters more than hate, that hope can survive even in the face of absolute evil." "Then prove it," snarled, and the corridor exploded with dark side energy. Wasn't just fighting anymore. He was channeling the Force itself through his rage, turning the entire battlefield into an extension of his will. Deck plating buckled and tore. Light fixtures exploded in showers of sparks. The very air grew cold as dark side energy leached heat from the environment. And worst of all, the who'd been standing by now moved forward with eerie coordination. not following orders but controlled directly through force manipulation, puppets with imperial training, and no hesitation about killing to serve their master's will. Found himself facing 6 moving with unnatural precision, their blaster fire coordinated in patterns that eliminated escape routes. His Klingon combat training kicked in. He was outnumbered, and his opponents had superior positioning. By any tactical analysis, he should retreat, call for reinforcements, approach strategically. Instead, he roared and charged directly into their formation, spinning in patterns that deflected blaster bolts through pure kinetic redirection. It was insane. It was glorious. And it was working because controlled by dark side manipulation, followed predictable patterns that warrior instincts could anticipate. Meanwhile, had recovered from initial assault and discovered something that both terrified and exhilarated her. The force connection the crystals had granted wasn't just passive reception, it was active manipulation. Her empathic abilities, already formidable, had become something more, the capacity to project emotions rather than just sense them. She reached out toward through the force, not attacking but offering something the Dark Lord hadn't felt in decades: compassion. Pure, unconditional compassion for the broken being inside the armor, for who'd lost everything and couldn't forgive himself, for the boy who'd been a slave and the young man who'd loved too deeply, and the Jedi who'd fallen trying to save his wife. Control wavered. For just an instant, the dark side maelstrom lessened, and his lightsaber's trajectory shifted by millimeters, enough for it to land another strike against his father's armor. "Stop," commanded, but his voice carried less certainty than before. "Stop trying to save me. I am beyond redemption. Accept that and kill me, or stand aside and watch everyone you care about die." "I'll never give up on you," said, and his words carried the absolute conviction of a Jedi who'd learned that faith sometimes mattered more than power. "You're my father. You saved me once. I can save you now. All you have to do is choose." On the bridge, Picard watched tactical displays showing the boarding action's progress, while simultaneously managing the fleet engagement that raged around Enterprise. Thrawn's forces had adapted to their enhanced shields, concentrating fire on specific points to create weak spots, rather than attempting to overwhelm them wholesale. "Captain, shields are holding at 67%, data reported from Ops. However, Grand Admiral Thrawn's fleet is employing rotating bombardment patterns that are gradually degrading our defensive capabilities. At current rates, we have approximately 18 minutes before shield collapse. And boarding party. Making progress toward the warp core. If they reach the crystal matrix, they'll destroy it and we lose our enhanced capabilities," finished grimly. "Captain, we need to end this boarding action fast." But Picard was watching sensor readings from the corridor where and fought, seeing the force energy fluctuations that Enterprise's enhanced sensors could now barely measure. "No, number one, we need to trust. This isn't a tactical engagement anymore. It's something larger. The Force brought us to this moment. Now we have to have faith in what it's trying to accomplish." "Faith isn't a tactical doctrine, sir," voice came through, strained with combat exertion. "And I could use some," the channel filled with the sounds of striking armor, "tactical support." "Negative, mister, hold your position. Needs time to reach." In the corridor, that reaching was becoming increasingly desperate. Could feel his father's conflict through the Force, the light side spark struggling against the darkness, screaming against armor-plated prison. But the dark side had decades of momentum. Breaking through required more than could provide alone. Which was when the crystals made their second choice. Throughout Enterprise, the integrated force-sensitive crystals had been observing the battle, feeling the light side struggling against overwhelming darkness. They'd offered power to the ship, had accepted full integration with Federation technology, had become bridges between mystical energy and scientific principles. Now they offered something more, themselves. The warp core pulsed with light that flooded through every corridor, every deck, every system on Enterprise. And in that light, every crew member suddenly felt the Force as felt it, not as an abstract energy but as a living connection between all beings, a reminder that nothing existed in isolation, that every choice rippled outward through time and space. Beverly in sickbay felt it as the interconnection of all living things, the truth that healing meant recognizing wholeness rather than treating symptoms. Geordi in engineering felt it as the harmony between order and chaos, technology and mysticism, logic and faith. Data, whose android nature should have made him immune to Force influence, felt it as the ultimate unknown variable, consciousness that transcended programming, purpose that exceeded function. And on the bridge, Picard felt it as the weight of command magnified across reality itself. Every decision a captain made echoing through lives beyond counting, every principle upheld or abandoned sending ripples through the Force that shaped destinies he'd never see. But most powerfully, Vader felt it. The kyber crystal's light didn't attack him. It simply reminded him of a boy on Tatooine who dreamed of freedom and helping others, reminded him of a young Jedi who loved deeply and believed in justice, reminded him of a man who'd stood beside his secret wife watching twin suns set and promising that love would survive anything. "No," Vader whispered, but his voice carried less conviction than before. "No, that man died. I killed him." "You buried him," Luke countered, lowering his lightsaber not in surrender but in invitation. "Under rage and pain and guilt, but he's still there, Father. I can feel him right now, screaming to break free. And the crystals, they're giving you the strength to do it. All you have to do is choose. Choose Anakin Skywalker. Choose the light. Choose me." Vader stood at the precipice of a decision that would define reality itself. On one side, the dark side, the power that had sustained him, the rage that had kept him alive, the certainty that strength mattered more than sentiment. On the other, a path he'd abandoned decades ago, the light side, compassion, the slim chance that redemption was possible even for monsters. And around him, through the Force connection the kyber crystals had granted, he felt Enterprise's crew, their hopes, their principles, their absolute conviction that even the darkest being could choose light if given the chance. It was insufferable. It was naive. It was everything Darth Vader had rejected for decades. And beneath the armor, in the broken remains of Anakin Skywalker's heart, it was the thing he wanted more desperately than he'd ever wanted power. Vader's respirator wheezed, each breath a struggle against the decision pressing down on him. "I have done terrible things, killed Jedi, murdered younglings, destroyed worlds, tortured beings for information and pleasure. There is no redemption for what I've become." "There's always redemption," Troy said softly, her empathic abilities now enhanced enough to project not just compassion but absolute forgiveness. "Not because you deserve it, but because that's what redemption means, the possibility of being more than your worst choices. You can't undo what you've done, but you can choose what you do next." Vader looked at his son, saw Luke's unwavering faith despite everything, and felt something crack inside the armor that had nothing to do with mechanical damage, and everything to do with the prison he'd built around his own heart. "Help me," Anakin Skywalker whispered through Vader's vocabulator, the voice mixing the Dark Lord's hollow rasp with something that sounded almost human. I don't know how to come back from this." Luke stepped forward, lightsaber deactivating, and did something that no one in the galaxy would have thought possible. He embraced his father, not Darth Vader the Dark Lord, but Anakin Skywalker the broken man, and through the Force, through the kyber crystal's light, through pure stubborn hope that refused to accept darkness as final, he offered his father the thing no Sith had received in 1,000 years. Unconditional love. And in that moment, something shifted. The dark side maelstrom that had surrounded Vader guttered like a candle in wind. The stormtroopers he'd been controlling collapsed, their minds suddenly freed from Force manipulation, and the yellow corruption in his eyes flickered, showing blue, just for an instant, but enough. Enough to prove that light could survive darkness, that redemption was possible, that hope mattered. On the bridge, Picard watched sensors showing the Force energy signatures normalize and felt something he hadn't expected. Relief mixed with awe. "Mr. Data, what's Vader's status?" "Difficult to determine precisely, Captain. The dark side energy that was radiating from his position has decreased by 78%. I am reading. I believe it is possible that Darth Vader has chosen the light side, though my data on Force-based redemption is limited." "That's because it's never happened," came Thrawn's voice across the open channel, his tone carrying something that might have been respect if the Grand Admiral were capable of such emotion. "Captain Picard, I congratulate you. You've accomplished what I thought impossible. You've broken Darth Vader's conviction in the dark side. Unfortunately, that changes nothing strategically. You still face my fleet. Your shields are still failing, and I still have my trap within the trap." "Which is?" Picard asked, though dread was already settling in his stomach. "While you've been focused on Vader's redemption, my forces have positioned orbital bombardment platforms around Balmorra. If I cannot have your ship, I can still accomplish my objective. Teach the galaxy that principles are no defense against practical power. In 30 seconds, those platforms will begin firing on Balmorra's major population centers. 8 billion lives, Captain, and your enhanced Enterprise, powerful as it's become, cannot evacuate them fast enough to matter. You will watch billions die, and the galaxy will remember that your Federation principles were powerless to prevent it." The tactical display confirmed Thrawn's words. 78 orbital platforms had moved into position during the chaos of the boarding action, each one armed with weapons capable of reducing cities to glass. Enterprise could destroy them, but not before they fired, could evacuate millions, but not billions. Thrawn had done what he always did, turned victory into defeat by thinking 3 moves ahead. "Captain," Riker said urgently, "we have to do something. We can't just watch." But Picard was looking at the Force energy readings, at the kyber crystal's radiant light, at the moment of redemption that had just occurred despite impossible odds. And he understood something that Thrawn, brilliant as he was, hadn't accounted for. The Force didn't just respond to individuals. It responded to choices that resonated across reality itself. "Mr. Skywalker," Picard said quietly into his comm badge, "I need you and your father to do something that's never been attempted. Can 2 Force users, one light, one recently returned to the light, working through kyber crystals enhanced by Federation technology, can you protect 8 billion people across an entire planet?" There was silence on the channel. Then Luke's voice, filled with exhaustion but also hope. "I don't know, Captain, but the Force works through faith, and right now, with my father finally choosing light, maybe that's enough. We'll try." In the corridor, Anakin Skywalker, no longer Darth Vader in spirit if not yet in form, reached out to his son. And together, father and son who'd been separated by darkness for decades finally united in the light, channeling the Force through Enterprise's kyber crystals, through Federation technology that had learned to harmonize with this galaxy's mystical energy, through the absolute conviction that hope and principle and love were stronger than any weapon. What happened next would be studied by Force scholars for generations. 8 billion beings across an entire planet suddenly enveloped in a Force-based shield generated by 2 Jedi, amplified by kyber crystals, powered by Federation antimatter reactors, and sustained by a principle that transcended both galaxies. That life mattered, that beings deserved protection, that sacrifice for others was the highest expression of the Force's will. Thrawn's bombardment platforms fired. Turbolaser beams that could level mountains struck the Force shield and dissipated harmlessly, their energy absorbed and redirected back into the cosmos. On the Chimera Asterisk, Grand Admiral Thrawn stared at his tactical displays showing the impossible and felt something he'd rarely experienced: complete strategic surprise. "Fascinating," he murmured. They've turned mysticism into tactical advantage through technology, created a defense I didn't anticipate because I couldn't have anticipated it. Captain Picard, you've done what I thought impossible. You've unified two fundamentally incompatible approaches to reality. That is, actually quite brilliant. Picard stood on his bridge, watching 8 billion lives protected by Force and Federation working in harmony, and felt the weight of command transform into something else, purpose fulfilled. Grand Admiral Thrawn, I suggest you withdraw your forces. You've lost. Not tactically, your fleet still outnumbers us, but philosophically. You wanted to prove that principles are weakness. Instead, we've proven their strength when combined with the courage to act on them. The lesson has been taught, but not the one you intended. There was a long pause. Then Thrawn's image appeared on screen, those red eyes gleaming with something that might have been admiration. I concede the field, Captain. You've won this encounter, but remember, the galaxy is large and our paths will cross again. I look forward to studying you further. The transmission cut. And as the Imperial fleet withdrew, as the force shield around Balmorra slowly dissipated with the immediate threat past, as Anakin Skywalker collapsed into his son's arms exhausted by the first truly selfless act he'd performed in decades, Enterprise hung in space, transformed, triumphant, and forever changed by a galaxy that had tested their principles and found them not wanting. That HAPPNED, father and son, light side victory, 8 billion saved through faith. But this isn't over. Part 3 will show the CONSEQUENCES of what just happened. The Force has plans. Thrawn isn't done. And Enterprise, they're not the same ship anymore. Subscribe now or miss the conclusion to the greatest crossover ever told. One section left, don't you dare leave. The medical bay aboard Enterprise was never designed for what it now contained. A 7-foot-tall Sith Lord, whose life support systems were barely functional, and whose redemption had nearly killed him. Beverly Crusher stood over Anakin Skywalker with medical instruments that blended Federation technology with desperate improvisation, trying to stabilize a being who was more machine than man, and whose survival depended on equipment that was failing by the minute. His respiratory system is collapsing, Beverly said, her physician's calm barely concealing the urgency. The dark side energy was actually sustaining him, keeping damaged organs functional through pure rage. Now that he's chosen the light side, his body is realizing how close to death it actually is. Luke stood at his father's side, one hand gripping the black-gloved mechanical fingers, refusing to let go even as monitors screamed warnings. "Can you save him?" "I don't know," Beverly admitted with the brutal honesty that made her one of Starfleet's finest doctors. His injuries are catastrophic, degree burns across 70% of his body, lung damage from volcanic gases, cybernetic implants integrated so deeply that removing them would kill him faster than leaving them in. "Luke, your father has been dying for 20 years. The dark side just wouldn't let him finish." Through cracked lenses in his helmet, Anakin's eyes, now blue, finally free of Sith corruption, met his son's. "Let me go," he whispered, each word a struggle against failing systems. "I have done what needed to be done, protected billions, chosen light, that's enough." "No," Luke said fiercely. "You don't get to die now, not after finally coming back. We have years to make up for, conversations we never had, moments we'll never get back, but we can start here. Dad, please, fight. Not with the dark side this time, fight with hope." Beverly watched the monitor readings fluctuate and made a command decision that would have gotten her court-martialed under standard protocols. "Computer, activate emergency medical hologram. We need consultation on cybernetic integration with organic systems." The EMH materialized, a holographic doctor with the programmed expertise of Starfleet's finest medical minds and the social skills of a particularly arrogant computer virus. He took one look at Anakin and his holographic eyes widened. "Well," the EMH said with characteristic bluntness, "this is beyond any trauma case in Starfleet records. What happened to him? Immersion in lava. Molten rock, yes, Luke confirmed. On Mustafar 23 years ago, his former master left him to die. His former master showed remarkable restraint. Most patients with these injuries don't survive the first hour, let alone 2 decades. The EMH circled Anakin's prone form, scanning with holographic instruments that could perceive details organic doctors might miss. However, I'm detecting something unusual. His cellular structure shows force energy integration at a molecular level. This midi-chlorian, count his biology displays, is off any scale I've been programmed to recognize. Dr. Crusher, I believe his connection to the Force is the only thing keeping him alive right now. Then we use that, Beverly said, medical determination overriding any hesitation about working with mystical energies Federation science barely understood. Luke, you said the Force connects all living things. Can you use that connection to stabilize him? Channel light side energy the way the dark side was sustaining him before. Luke closed his eyes, reaching out through the Force toward his father's fading life signature. What he found nearly broke him. Anakin Skywalker was a tapestry of scars, trauma, and damage held together by will alone. The dark side had been like a narcotic, numbing the pain and forcing damaged systems to function beyond their capacity. Now, without that artificial support, everything was shutting down. But there was something else there too. Deep in Anakin's Force signature, beneath the damage and trauma, was a core of light that had survived everything. The innocence of a boy who dreamed of freedom, the idealism of a young Jedi who'd wanted to save everyone, the love of a husband and father that no amount of darkness had fully extinguished. Luke grabbed onto that light and held on with everything he had, channeling the Force not as power but as connection, reminding Anakin's cells that they were part of a living being who deserved to survive, who had people who loved him, who still had a purpose in this galaxy. I've got him, Luke said through gritted teeth, sweat beading on his forehead from the effort. But I can't hold this forever. Hours, maybe. We need a permanent solution. Beverly looked at the EMH, who was already running calculations that would have taken organic doctors days to complete. Options. Radical cybernetic replacement, the EMH said immediately. Replace the damaged organic components with properly integrated synthetic systems, not the crude Imperial technology that's currently killing him, but Federation cybernetics designed to work with biological systems rather than dominate them. We're talking full respiratory reconstruction, dermal regeneration where possible, neural interface optimization. Essentially, we'd be performing the galaxy's most complex medical procedure on a patient who's technically been dying for 2 decades. Can it be done? Luke demanded. I have no idea, the EMH replied cheerfully. But it's either that or watch him die, so I suggest we try. What followed was 18 hours of surgery that pushed Federation medical technology beyond anything it was designed for, combining dermal regenerators with back-to-treatments, neural interfaces with force-sensitive biometrics, cybernetic implants that didn't just replace function but enhanced it. Beverly worked with the focused intensity that had earned her chief medical officer position, while the EMH provided real-time calculations and caught errors before they became fatal. And through it all, Luke stood at his father's side, channeling the Force as a bridge between life and death, refusing to let Anakin slip away even when exhaustion threatened to drag them both into darkness. On the bridge, Picard coordinated with New Republic leadership, explained what had happened at Balmorra, and weathered the political storm that followed. Some New Republic senators praised Enterprise's intervention. 8 billion lives saved was impossible to argue with. Others worried about the precedent it set, about a ship with power to reshape battles being involved so deeply in galactic politics. Captain Picard, Mon Mothma said via subspace transmission, her expression mixing gratitude with concern. What you accomplished was miraculous, but it also demonstrated that Enterprise has capabilities that exceed anything in this galaxy. You can transport through shields, generate force-based defenses, coordinate light and dark force users through your technology. That makes you simultaneously our greatest asset and our greatest concern. I understand your worries, Senator, Picard replied. Enterprise has become something neither Federation nor New Republic anticipated, but our principles remain unchanged. We stand for freedom, dignity, and the inherent rights of all sentient beings. That hasn't changed just because our capabilities have expanded. Principles can change when power increases, Mon Mothma countered. History, both in your galaxy and ours, is full of beings who started with noble intentions and were corrupted by the very power they thought would let them do good. It was a valid concern, one Picard had been wrestling with since the kyber integration. Enterprise wasn't just a Federation starship anymore. It was something hybrid, something unprecedented, a vessel that could channel the Force, that had participated in a Sith Lord's redemption, that had saved 8 billion lives through a combination of technology and mysticism that shouldn't have been possible. What responsibility came with that power? What limitations should they accept? Where was the line between helping and dominating? Senator, I propose a compromise, Picard said after considering. Enterprise will remain in this galaxy for now. We still haven't found a way home, and leaving seems increasingly unlikely. But we'll establish protocols. We intervene only when requested by legitimate authorities. We don't use our enhanced capabilities to dictate policy, and we remain accountable to the New Republic's democratic processes. In essence, we become what Starfleet has always been, explorers and peacekeepers, not kingmakers or conquerors. Mon Mothma studied him through the viewscreen, her political instincts weighing his sincerity. Finally, she nodded. Agreed, but Captain, I want regular reports. What you've become, what Enterprise represents, it's too important to operate without oversight. And if you ever abuse that power, she let the implication hang. Understood completely, Senator. Enterprise's strength is only valuable if it's tempered by accountability. We won't forget that. After the transmission ended, Riker approached Picard's command chair with the expression of a first officer who needed to voice uncomfortable truths. Captain, the crew is changed. Ever since the kyber integration, people are reporting force sensitivity. Not at Luke's level, but enough to feel connections they never had before, to sense things beyond normal perception. We have engineers who can diagnose problems through force intuition. Security officers who can predict threats before they manifest. Even Data is reporting probability calculations that exceed his positronic capacity. We've been transformed, Picard said quietly. Not just the ship, but us. By integrating fully with the Force, we've become part of this galaxy in ways the Prime Directive never contemplated. Is that good or bad? I don't know, number one. Ask me in a decade. 18 hours after surgery began, Beverly emerged from medical bay looking more exhausted than Picard had ever seen her. But she was smiling. He's stable, she reported. Not fully healed. That will take months of recovery and rehabilitation. But Anakin Skywalker is alive, breathing without a respirator for the first time in 23 years, and his cybernetic systems are actually improving his function rather than barely keeping him alive. The EMH is convinced we've pioneered integration techniques that will revolutionize medical science in both galaxies. And Luke collapsed from force exhaustion about an hour ago. He's sleeping now, but he's fine. Captain, I've never seen anything like what he did. He held his father's life force together through pure will and love for 18 hours straight. That kind of dedication. She trailed off, searching for words. It's what Starfleet claims to value but rarely achieves. Picard visited Medical Bay to see Anakin Skywalker, no longer Darth Vader in form or spirit, lying in a biobed with Federation medical displays monitoring his recovery. The black armor was gone, replaced by medical garments and regeneration fields. The mechanical respirator had been replaced by properly integrated synthetic lungs that worked in harmony with biological systems. And the face, scarred, aged, but recognizably human, was peaceful in ways it probably hadn't been in decades. "He asked to see you when he woke," Beverly said quietly. "Said there were things that needed to be said." When Anakin's eyes opened, blue and clear, free of yellow corruption, they fixed on Picard with an intensity that carried weight despite the weakness of his recovering body. "Captain Picard," Anakin's voice was his own now, no longer filtered through vocabulators. It was rough from disuse, hoarse from damaged vocal cords, but unmistakably human. "I owe you everything, my son's life, my redemption, the chance to be more than a monster." "You owe me nothing, Mr. Skywalker," Picard replied, pulling up a chair beside the bio-bed. "What happened was your choice. Luke offered the path, but you had to choose to walk it. But you protected him while he did, protected us both, gave the Force a place to work through your ship, your crew, your principles." Anakin shifted slightly, his new cybernetics adapting to movement in ways the old Imperial systems never had. "I've spent 20 years as the Empire's enforcer, killed thousands personally, destroyed worlds on Palpatine's orders. There is no redemption for that, no amount of light side energy that makes those deaths acceptable." "No," Picard agreed, refusing to offer false comfort. "You're responsible for atrocities that will haunt this galaxy for generations. Nothing you do now erases that. But," and here his voice took on the quality that had guided him through countless moral crises, "redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about accepting responsibility for it and choosing to be better going forward. You can't undo what you've done, but you can spend whatever time you have left trying to repair the damage, to help where you once harmed, to protect where you once destroyed." "Is that enough?" Anakin asked, the question carrying the weight of a man who'd glimpsed damnation and was terrified it was too late to escape it. Can someone who was Darth Vader ever really be Anakin Skywalker again? "I don't know," Picard admitted, "but I know that every sentient being deserves the chance to try. The Federation, and Starfleet specifically, was founded on the principle that people can grow, can change, can be more than their worst moments. If we don't believe that about you, then we don't truly believe it at all." Anakin's eyes glistened with tears, the first he'd cried in 23 years, the emotional release of a being who'd convinced himself he was beyond such weakness. "My son believes in me. You believe redemption is possible, but the galaxy I terrorized, will they ever accept that Vader is gone? Some will, some won't, and you'll have to live with both responses." Picard leaned forward, his command presence softening into something more pastoral. "Anakin, I've spent my career believing that the measure of civilization is not in how we treat our best, but in how we treat those who have fallen. If the New Republic and the Federation can offer you a chance to atone, to rebuild, to contribute to healing the galaxy you helped break, then perhaps we're worthy of the principles we claim to hold. But that means you have to do the work, every day, for the rest of your life. Can you do that?" Anakin closed his eyes, feeling the Force flowing through him. No longer the dark side's corrosive hatred, but the light side's gentle guidance. It showed him a future he'd thought impossible, working with Luke to rebuild the Jedi Order, helping the New Republic establish justice where the Empire had brought tyranny, teaching young Force sensitives that darkness wasn't inevitable, that even the most corrupted being could choose light. It wouldn't erase his crimes, wouldn't bring back the Jedi younglings he'd murdered or the rebels he'd tortured, but it would be something, a life spent repairing rather than destroying, hope offered where he'd once dealt only in fear. "I can try," Anakin whispered. "Force help me, I can try." 3 days later, Enterprise held position above Balmorra, while the New Republic finalized negotiations that would bring the industrial world into their alliance. The victory at Balmorra had shifted galactic politics. Imperial remnant forces were fracturing further. More systems were joining the New Republic, and the name Enterprise was becoming legendary throughout the galaxy as the ship from beyond that had saved billions. On the observation deck, Picard stood with his senior staff, looking out at stars that still refused to be home but had become something else. A second chance, a mission renewed, a purpose that transcended finding a way back. Captain's log, Stardate 40 3997.5. Supplemental entry regarding our permanent status in this galaxy. After extensive discussions with New Republic leadership and consultation with my crew, I have made a decision that will define Enterprise's future, perhaps forever. He turned to face his officers, Riker, Data, Beverly, Geordi, Worf, Troy, each of them transformed by their experiences, each carrying force sensitivity now that made them something between Federation officers and this galaxy's force users. "We're not going home," Picard said simply. "Not because we can't. Data believes that with sufficient study of the original subspace anomaly, we might eventually recreate the conditions that brought us here. But because we've become something this galaxy needs. We've proven that Federation principles can coexist with the Force, that technology and mysticism aren't opposed but complementary, that beings from beyond can integrate rather than dominate." "So we stay permanently?" Beverly asked, the question carrying both excitement and melancholy. "We stay as long as we're needed, as long as there's work to be done helping this galaxy recover from the Empire, establishing the New Republic, protecting beings who can't protect themselves. We become what Starfleet has always aspired to be, explorers, peacekeepers, and living proof that civilization means something more than power." "It's not what we planned," Riker observed. "No," Picard agreed, "but sometimes the best missions are the ones we don't plan, the ones that choose us rather than us choosing them." "Poetic Captain," Data said, his android mind now capable of appreciating poetry in ways his programming had never anticipated. Another gift of Force integration. "But there is a practical concern. If we remain in this galaxy permanently, we become the Federation's sole representatives. Everything we do, every principle we uphold or compromise, will define how this galaxy perceives our people. That is significant responsibility." "Which is why we'll hold ourselves to the highest standards," Picard replied. "We'll be what Starfleet taught us to be, not perfect, but always striving to be better. And when we fail, and we will fail occasionally, we'll acknowledge it, learn from it, and keep trying. Because that's what separates civilization from barbarism. Not the absence of mistakes, but the willingness to recognize and correct them." Worf's deep voice rumbled approval. "An honorable philosophy. I believe the Klingon High Council would respect such an approach, as do I." "Counselor," Picard said, turning to Troy, "you've been quiet. What do you sense about this decision through the Force?" Troy closed her eyes, her enhanced empathic abilities reaching out through the Force connection that now linked her to countless beings across the galaxy. "Hope, Captain. I sense hope that has been missing from this galaxy for a generation. The Empire ruled through fear. The New Republic is trying to govern through democracy. But you, Enterprise, we represent something they'd almost forgotten. The possibility that beings can be better than circumstances force them to be. That principles matter even when they're inconvenient. That hope isn't naive, it's essential." "Then we honor that hope," Picard said with finality. "Number 1, set course for the next system that needs us. Mr. Data, continue analysis of subspace anomalies. We may not be trying to go home, but understanding how we arrived could help other displaced vessels in the future. Mr. Worf, maintain tactical readiness. Thrawn is still out there and he's learned from this encounter. He'll be back." As his crew dispersed to their duties, Picard remained in the observation lounge, watching stars that had become familiar through 3 months of displacement and transformation. Somewhere out there, the Federation continued without them, exploring, growing, living out the principles that Starfleet had instilled in every officer. And here, in a galaxy far, far away, one ship carried those principles forward, not as conquerors or saviors, but as guests who'd been invited to stay, as beings who'd found purpose in the most unlikely place. "Captain," Luke Skywalker's voice came from the entrance. He'd recovered from his Force exhaustion and now stood dressed in fresh Jedi robes, his lightsaber hanging from his belt but his presence radiating peace rather than combat readiness. "Mr. Skywalker, how is your father?" "Improving daily. Beverly says he'll need months of physical rehabilitation, but psychologically, he's healing in ways I didn't think possible. He wants to help rebuild the Jedi Order, wants to train Force sensitives in the light side, teach them the mistakes he made so they don't repeat them. He's asking for a chance to atone." "And will the New Republic allow that?" Luke smiled slightly. "They're terrified of him, but Mon Mothma understands pragmatism. A redeemed Anakin Skywalker teaching young Jedi is more valuable than an imprisoned war criminal. She's agreed to a provisional arrangement. My father works under my supervision, helps rebuild what he helped destroy, and proves through actions that his redemption is real." "And you, do you believe his redemption is real?" "I felt his heart through the Force when we protected Balmorra," Luke said quietly. "He was ready to die saving those 8 billion beings. That's not Darth Vader. That's Anakin Skywalker accepting that some things matter more than survival. So yes, Captain, I believe it's real, and I believe the Force brought you here to make it possible." Picard considered this, thinking about the chain of seemingly random events that had led Enterprise to this galaxy. The subspace anomaly, the attack by Imperial forces, the alliance with the Rebellion, the kyber integration, and finally the confrontation with Vader that had resulted in redemption rather than destruction. "The Force works in mysterious ways," Picard said with a slight smile. "That's what my masters always taught, and after Balmorra, I'm starting to believe they were right." Luke moved to stand beside Picard at the viewport. "Thank you, Captain. Not just for saving my father, but for proving that beings from beyond this galaxy can embody the forces well better than most of us who were born here. You've given us hope that maybe the light side hasn't failed, that maybe the Jedi's principles can survive if we're willing to adapt them." "We gave you nothing you didn't already have," Picard corrected gently. "You believed in redemption when no one else did. You refused to give up on your father despite every tactical and logical reason to do so. That faith, that absolute conviction that light could triumph over darkness, that came from you, not us. We just provided the means for it to manifest." "Then maybe that's what the Force wanted, the means married to the will, your technology plus our faith, Federation science plus Jedi mysticism." Luke turned to face Picard directly. "Captain, I want to ask something that might sound strange. Would Enterprise be willing to become a mobile Jedi temple, a place where my father and I could train Force sensitives while traveling the galaxy helping the New Republic? We'd contribute to your mission, provide Force-based capabilities, and in exchange, we'd have a place to rebuild the Order away from political pressures." Picard raised an eyebrow. "You want to turn a Federation starship into a Jedi Academy?" "I want to create something new," Luke clarified. "Not the old Jedi Order with its rigid rules and emotional detachment. Something that combines Jedi wisdom with Federation principles. An order of Force users who explore and protect, who value knowledge and compassion, who see the Force not as a weapon but as a bridge between different ways of understanding reality." It was audacious. It violated a dozen Starfleet regulations. It would permanently transform Enterprise from a displaced vessel hopping to return home into a hybrid institution that belonged fully to neither galaxy. It was exactly the kind of impossible, idealistic, principled insanity that made Picard remember why he joined Starfleet in the first place. "I'll need to discuss it with my crew," Picard said, "and with New Republic leadership, and probably spend several weeks parsing the ethical implications. But Mr. Skywalker, I can't think of anything more in keeping with what Enterprise has become than serving as a place where two galaxies' philosophies merge into something greater than either." Luke's smile was luminous. "Thank you, Captain. May the Force be with you." "And with you, Mr. Skywalker. And with all of us who dare to believe that hope matters more than power, that principles survive darkness, and that sometimes the most important missions choose us rather than us choosing them. As Luke departed, Picard returned his gaze to the stars and allowed himself a moment of reflection. They'd come to this galaxy by accident, stayed by necessity, and now would remain by choice. Enterprise would never be the same ship that had entered that subspace anomaly months ago. But perhaps that was the point. Growth meant change. Purpose meant adaptation. And sometimes the greatest discoveries weren't new worlds or alien civilizations, but new ways of being that transcended everything you thought you understood about reality. "Captain Picard to bridge," he said, activating his comm badge with the tone of a commander who'd found renewed purpose. "Set course for Coruscant. If we're going to help rebuild a galaxy, we might as well start at the center. Engage." And in the depths of space, as New Republic systems celebrated their unlikely savior and Imperial remnants plotted revenge, as Anakin Skywalker took his first steps toward redemption and Luke Skywalker dreamed of a new Jedi Order, Enterprise turned toward the galactic core. A ship from beyond the stars, carrying principles that transcended universes, crewed by beings who'd learned that sometimes the Force had better plans than the ones you made for yourself. The Empire was broken, the New Republic was rising, and somewhere between Federation science and Jedi mysticism, a new hope was being born, not just for one galaxy, but for the infinite possibilities that existed when different realities chose to work together rather than apart. May the Force be with them all. And may the principles they carried, Federation and Jedi alike, prove strong enough to build something worthy of the sacrifices made to protect them. The journey wasn't over, it was just beginning. The Chronicles would remember it as the moment when two galaxies touched and both were transformed. Enterprise remained in the Star Wars galaxy, no longer seeking a way home but embracing a new mission, rebuilding a civilization that had nearly destroyed itself through tyranny and fear. Under Captain Picard's command, the ship became something unprecedented, a mobile academy where Jedi wisdom merged with Federation principles, where technology and mysticism worked in harmony rather than opposition. Anakin Skywalker spent his remaining years atoning for Vader's crimes, training young Force sensitives with a humility born from having embraced absolute darkness and fought his way back to light. His teachings focused not on power but on choice, the constant, daily choice to serve rather than dominate, to protect rather than control, to love rather than fear. Luke Skywalker built a new Jedi Order that honored the old while learning from its failures. His students learned lightsaber combat aboard Enterprise's holodecks, studied Force philosophy alongside Federation ethics, and graduated as beings who could move between mysticism and science without rejecting either. Grand Admiral Thrawn never forgave the defeat at Balmorra, but he came to respect it. In their few encounters afterward, he and Picard engaged in tactical chess matches, where both sides learned, adapted, and grew. Adversaries bound by mutual recognition that genius untempered by ethics led only to ash. The New Republic stabilized, then flourished, guided by Mon Mothma's wisdom and protected by Enterprise's presence. Systems that had cowered under Imperial rule rediscovered democracy. Species that had been oppressed found their voices. And throughout it all, one ship served as proof that civilization meant more than power. It meant principles worth dying for and, more importantly, worth living for. On Enterprise's 10th anniversary in the galaxy far, far away, Picard stood on the bridge that had become as familiar as the ship he'd commanded in his own universe. Around him, crew who'd been transformed by Force integration worked alongside Jedi students who'd learned to appreciate Federation technology. Human, Twi'lek, Klingon, Mon Calamari, all united by principles that transcended species and origin. "Captain," Data said from Ops, his android nature now enhanced by Force perception that made him more than machine but something beautifully indefinable. "Long-range sensors are detecting another subspace anomaly. Configuration matches the phenomenon that brought us here. Sir, it's a way home. Picard studied the sensor readings showing a door back to the Federation, to Starfleet, to everything they'd left behind. Then he looked at his crew, at the Jedi students learning on his ship, at the galaxy they'd spent a decade helping heal. Note its location for the records, Picard said finally. But we're not taking it, not yet. Maybe someday when this galaxy no longer needs us. But today, he smiled. Today we have work to do. Helm, set course for the Outer Rim. There are systems there requesting Federation assistance with establishing democratic institutions. Let's show them how it's done. Aye, Captain, came the response. Not just from one officer, but from the entire bridge crew who'd found that home wasn't a place. It was a purpose, and they'd found theirs among the stars. May the Force be with you always. The saga continues. Subscribe for Part 3. What if the Borg invaded the Star Wars galaxy, where Enterprise faces its greatest nightmare in a universe unprepared for the collective's hunger? The Federation, the Force, the Borg. Some battles transcend galaxies. Don't miss it. Subscribe now. May the Force be with you. More stories await.